Hi friends, welcome back to my channel. You saw the thumbnail, you saw the title, you know what we're here for. This is my April wrap-up. April was an interesting month. I only read 14 books in April, which if you've watched a few of these wrap-ups is not the norm. Usually I hover right about 20 books is my sweet spot, but listen, it was just a slower month and that's okay. I also started a project where I'm listening to a lot of my Libro FM audiobooks, and I DNF'd a lot, which we will talk about because I usually average about 2 DNFs. I have 5 DNFs this month. So yeah, that was interesting. I'm also changing my rating scale, or the way I rate books. I've been wanting to for a while because I think the standard way we use the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 star, it just hasn't felt accurate for how I'm feeling about the books, and I've been wanting to change it for a while. And then I listened to Becca talk about the way she rates her books on the 5-star scale, and so going forward I am going to give a book a 5 if it is an all-time favorite, changed my personality, I'm absolutely obsessed, couldn't get over it. Like, those books are my 5-star books. A 4-star is a book that I still really liked. I super enjoyed it. I had the best time reading it, but I was not obsessed with it in the same way that I would be obsessed with a 5-star read. A 3-star is that I liked it. Yeah, I liked it. I had a good time. A 2-star is going to be a meh book. And then a 1-star is going to be I did not like this. I don't anticipate giving out a whole lot of 1-stars because generally if I do not like what I'm reading, I DNF it. But it's there in case I hate read something, you know? So let's get into the DNFs. So let's start with the one that I DNF'd that I pulled from my TBR jar, The Cost of Knowing. I am so sad that I DNF'd this, and this is YA, and it's magical realism, maybe a little bit speculative, where it's about 2 brothers who were in a very traumatic car accident with their parents that killed their parents, and then when the boys woke up in the hospital, they both had the ability to see the future for the older brother and to see the past for the younger brother. And while I did like it, I like Brittany Morris's writing style. I liked the themes. I liked what she was doing in that book. The older brother has a lot of anxiety, which was fair and earned, but like the way Brittany Morris wrote his anxiety brought out my anxiety. So it was just not a good fit for me. I was so anxious while I was reading it, like stomach churning. I just did not feel good. So I DNF'd it, sadly, and unhauled it. So we're making progress on getting these books off my shelves. I also DNF'd Goblin Mode, which I had gotten from the library, and I thought this idea was so cute, but through reading it / listening to it on audio, I quickly realized that this author's definition of a goblin does not apply to me whatsoever. It was a lot of like, goblins enjoy being sticky and muddy and being in nature, and it had like a DIY, like how to make a mushroom terrarium and how to, you know, do all these like very cool things, but things that are just not my cup of tea. I think I've learned that instead of being a goblin, maybe I aspire to be a hobbit. I think that might be more my speed. I also DNF'd Unstoppable Us Volume 2, which makes me sad because I read Volume 1 last year and I loved it so much. I gave it 5 stars. And this is nonfiction for kids about early human civilization. And I DNF'd this one because the tone in this one is really angry, which is fair for where humanity is now. Like, I don't fault Yuval Noah Harari for being angry, but I think for a book for children, the tone is too angry. Like, this is for, 8 to maybe 12-year-olds, and it was too angry, it was too depressing, and it felt less like a nonfiction history book and more like he had an agenda outside of just educating the kids, like educating the kids in a very specific way. which isn't necessarily bad, but it was so different from the tone of the first book. And then I also DNF'd Axiom's End and A Merry Little Meet Cute. I'm going to talk about them together because normally when I DNF a book, it's just because the book wasn't for me. Like, I wasn't the right reader for it. That's totally fine. I'm going to say for these two, I think they are objectively bad. Like, the writing is not good. Of course, with the caveat that books are art is subjective, so just because I think it's bad doesn't mean it is bad. But for me, I think the writing is bad for these two books in different ways. But Axiom's End is a like first contact story, and I didn't even get to the alien. I was so bored, and so the writing was not engaging for me. I also think this one probably falls more under the thriller category, like a sci-fi thriller, and I am not a thriller reader. I don't enjoy thrillers. I don't like the writing style for thrillers, and so like that definitely could have been part of it. And then for Merry Little Meet Cute, this one is a holiday rom-com where this porn star is hired to be the lead actress in this Hallmark super conservative Christmas movie. And the way the hero, so the heroine, who's the porn star, has like an OnlyFans channel as supplemental income, and the hero, who is her co-star in the film, has been watching her OnlyFans, and so when he meets her on set, he recognizes her but doesn't say anything, and then just the way he thinks about her and thinks about her body in the beginning, it gave me the ick. I didn't like it. So those are my DNFs. Now we're gonna get into all the books I finished. We are gonna start with the ones that I don't have physical copies of because I will forget about them if I don't do them at the top of the video. And so we're gonna start with Speculations in Sin by Jennifer Ashley. This is book 7. This is book 7 in the Below Stairs mystery series. And I didn't love this one very much. It's definitely the shortest of the series so far. And this series is about Kat Holloway, who is a cook in a London townhouse, and she solves murders with the help of her friends. And I like it because I like this series because you don't get a lot of historical mystery series where the main character is in service. Most of the time, you know, they're all like, if not nobility, like they're above the rank and file basically. And I like that this one, Kat has to balance keeping her job with solving these mysteries. She can't just like haul off and do whatever she wants. And so I like it. I love the slow burn romance. The things I didn't love about this one, I didn't love the mystery. It was set in a bank, and I didn't like that very much. It also took a long time for the secondary characters to really come into play. Like Daniel, the love interest, who's in every book. We were over halfway through the book before he came in. It didn't have the same magic that the other books had. I forget what rating I gave it initially because I just changed my rating scale like at the end of the month. But I think based off my rating scale now, it's probably like a 2.75, maybe a 3, just because it wasn't my favorite. But you know, it's 7 books. Eventually I'm going to get to one that is not my favorite. I still love this series and I still highly recommend it. Next book we're going to talk about is Elizabeth Webster and the Court of Uncommon Pleas. This is by William Lashner. And this is a middle grade book. It's the first in a series about a girl named Elizabeth Webster who discovers that her family that the family business is being lawyers to the undead. I thought the concept was really fun, and the courtroom scenes were the highlight of the book. I didn't love how the kids were written, like Elizabeth and Henry, and I forget the other friend's name, like are supposed to be in 7th and 8th grade, and they read quite a bit older to me. But I think this is one of those middle grade books where, you know, there are some middle grade books that are just timeless. Anybody can read them, any age, just the themes, the writing, the characters, it transcends across ages and across reading categories or age categories. And then there are some books that are just meant for the age group that they are written for. And I think this book is one of those books where it is meant for its age group, not for adults who also read middle grade. So in terms of its intended audience, I think it's perfectly fine. It would probably be really, really fun to read as somebody in that age category, but for an adult going into that age category, it wasn't my favorite, and that's okay. It is servicing the people it is meant to service. So I think I probably gave it like a 2.5. It was a very meh book for me. And then the last book I don't have a copy of, but is also the last book I read of April. It is A Magical Girl Retires, and this is translated from Korean, and it's a novella, and it's like an ode to magical girl manga like Sailor Moon, and that's my only reference, I'm so sorry. And it's about a woman named Roa who is 29, and she lost her job because of COVID and has gotten into massive credit card debt and has decided to unalive herself by jumping off the bridge. And then she's approached by a magical girl and told that she's also a magical girl. But in this world, these magical girls, they don't get to fight monsters or demons or anything fun like that. Their opponents are climate change and capitalism. And so it's a weird book because the tone is so light and frothy, but then the content is really serious, and the stakes, like real life stakes, are pretty high. So I haven't rated it because I'm really conflicted about it. So I just kind of left it unrated. I did really love the audiobook, and I think like if you have 2 hours of your life and you are a Sailor Moon fan and you're interested in something that's like a little different, please check it out. All right, we're gonna start with my physical books, and we're gonna start with my 2-star books. So these are books that I was just kind of like meh about. We have a sliding scale though. We have, you know, solid meh and I liked it kind for them sometimes, that scale of meh. So let's start with the lowest one. Read This to Get Smarter by Blair Imani. This is nonfiction about race, class, gender, disability, and more. This is a good, I would say, primer book for somebody who is just getting ready to be willing to educate themselves about the social justice issues that we have, I'd say primarily in the United States, just because I don't know about other countries. I have followed Blair on Instagram for a really long time. I love her Smarter in Seconds series that she does on Instagram, and I think she's on YouTube as well. I feel like the way she writes scripts for her videos translates really well in an oral and visual component, and I just didn't feel like it translated as well into a purely written format. But I still highlighted the crap out of it, or I'm keeping it on my shelves because my twins have expressed interest in reading parts of this book, and I think it's a really good primer, so I will be holding on to it. But I think maybe my expectations were a little too high going into this. But this was also a book that I pulled out of my TBR jar for April. And then next we have A Proposal They Can't Refuse by Natalie Khanna. This is a This is a contemporary rom-com about Camila, whose family owns a Puerto Rican restaurant, and Liam, who co-owns a whiskey distillery with his grandfather, and Camila's abuelo and Liam's grandfather basically extort Camila and Liam into faking an engagement with each other, which I don't like that convention. That convention belongs in the 90s, and it should stay in the 90s. And I did like Camila and Liam. I liked their personalities. I liked them as characters. I didn't like how badly they communicated with each other. This whole book is built on miscommunication, like across the board, and not only between the love interests. Like, they miscommunicate with everybody. Nobody is spared. The whole book is a miscommunication trope, and I don't like that trope very much, and so that was really frustrating. And I thought the third act breakup was so dumb, but I really love the food writing. Food writing was impeccable. All right, and now we're moving up into my 3-star reads. So these were books that I liked and I enjoyed and I had a good time while reading. The first one is an ARC. It is The Pairing by Casey McQuiston. This comes out in August. Yes, and this is a second chance romance about 2 people who have been broken up for 4 years and then accidentally find themselves on the same food tour through Europe. And this is another one where the food writing is impeccable. Like, this is, in my opinion, this is a long contemporary romance novel. This is 400 pages. In my mind, that is too long. But I have been saying, I think Casey McQuiston needed 200 pages to tell the romance and then needed 200 pages to talk about all the food and wine in Europe. And if you've been to the cities, some of the cities that they go to in this book, Casey McQuiston captures those cities so well. Like, the few that I have been to, I felt like I was there again because their writing was so evocative of what it is like to be in that city and what the surroundings look like. Like, it was beautifully described. But again, there is so much miscommunication in this book where if these two characters had just had an honest, heartfelt conversation with each other, man, it just would have been a totally different book. So yes, this is also the horniest book I have ever read. Not in my life. That's an exaggeration, but this book is super horny. And there are a lot of steamy scenes, and there's a lot of talking about sex and wanting to have sex all the time, which I found exhausting. But that could just be my aceness coming through. So, but you know, my hornier friends have assured me that they will read this book and let me know if my reaction is valid or just a reflection of my lived experience. Anyways, and then the other book in this 3-star category is The Goblin Emperor by Catherine Addison, and this was also pulled from my TBR jar for the month of April, and this is fantasy. I mean, it's not classic because it's not that old, but I feel like it could be classic fantasy. But this is about Maya, who is half goblin, half elf, and has been sent into exile by his father, and then his father and his older brothers all die in an accident, and Maya is unexpectedly crowned as emperor. And so this is a book where nothing happens. This is a very slow political fantasy, and Maya, it really holds you through it because Maya is so easy to love, and you just want all the good things for him, and you just want everything to go well. And watching him struggle to adapt to court life but also refusing to change who he is as a person was so lovely and so delightful. I think I would have rated this book higher if it had been a little bit shorter, because it is a really long book for nothing to happen. But I also loved Maya so much that I was like, it's okay that nothing happened. But I think the writing is really beautiful, and my favorite part of this was watching Maya's relationship with his bodyguards. It was just so sweet. It is so sweet. But I'm so happy to have finally read this because this has been on my TBR for a really long time, and thank you to Tor for sending me a finished copy an eternity ago. I finally read it. All right, now we're on to the books that I really liked. Well, not really liked. Yeah, these are the ones I really liked. So these are all in the 4-star category. I think these are all 4.25 to 4.5. So we're gonna start with 2 nonfiction. I just want to say nonfiction has really been popping off for me this year, and it's great. I love it. I'm obsessed. I hope this continues through the whole year. We're going to start with Girly Drinks by Mallory O'Meara, and this is about the history of women and alcohol throughout the world, and this was fascinating. O'Meara goes back to like Mesopotamia and takes you through world history up to today, all around the world, obviously, about women's role in the production of alcohol, the distribution of alcohol, the selling of alcohol, the buying of alcohol. And it's fascinating. It's really easy to read. It is infuriating because, of course, men in the patriarchy have to ruin things for everybody, but I enjoyed it so much. This is like my perfect type of nonfiction where it's a really specific type of history talked about really well. I also listened to it on audio, and I love the audiobook. It was like listening to a podcast, which I think Mallory O'Meara is a podcaster, maybe. So it would make sense that her audiobook would sound like that, but it was fantastic. Highly recommend it. I said in the vlog where I read this that I wish my memory was better, because this was the type of book where I would love to just whip out these facts in small talk situations. I would be a menace. It would be great. The other book that I wish I had a better memory for is Raw Dog by Jamie Loftus. This is the naked truth about hot dogs. And I was a menace with this book. I started reading this on a girls' weekend with my mom and my sister and my soon-to-be sister-in-law. And I was that person that kept reading sections out of the book because I was so delighted with what I was reading. So apologies to those three that they had to put up with me. But Jamie Loftus starts off this book with kind of giving you the history of hot dogs in the United States, talks about which businesses where you get the most bang for your buck in terms of a hot dog, like Costco, obviously, and talks about how hot dogs are made, which I didn't like that part. That part was not a fun time. And then the rest of the book is this road trip that she took during the summer of 2021 and went to all these different iconic hot dog restaurants across the United States. And you really got a history of what these businesses have meant to their community, what they have meant for the advent, of hot dogs. There's also a chapter about the national hot dog eating competition that happens on the 4th of July, which that was my favorite section because it was so interesting and I knew nothing about the competition. And this is really funny. It's really irreverent. She is very critical of the US, so that can be cathartic. I found it cathartic because it's very fair critiques. And yeah, it was just, I have been obsessed with this cover since it came out, and I am so happy that the inside of the book lived up to my expectations based on the outside of the book. And then I read The Angel of Indian Lake by Stephen Graham Jones. This is the last book in the Indian Lake trilogy, and I didn't love this one as much as I loved the other two. And thankfully I read this at the beginning of the month, and so thankfully I've had some time to really sit with how I felt about this book and listen to some other people talk about it, and my husband read it, and so we were able to have a long conversation about it. And I think at the end of the day, this one is a lot sadder than the other two, which makes sense. I mean, Jade has really been through it, so it would make sense that this book is a little bit more sad, a little bit more somber, a little bit more dealing with all the trauma that Jade and the people that live in Indian Lake have, or that live in Proof Rock have experienced for 2 books of having a slasher come and, obliterate a good chunk of their town. So it makes sense. I was prepared for a fun, campy time like the other 2 books, and then this one, the tone is really different. I also had a harder time tracking what was going on in this one, and I think eventually I'm gonna have to reread the whole trilogy because it has been a full year since I read the first 2, and I think that gap affected my reading experience as well. So eventually I want to just read the whole series back to back to back, and then I think I might change my rating and my opinion of this one. However, I did, as always, loved being with Jade. That was the best. Jade also in this one is a little bit more isolated. You're getting more of just Jade and less of the people that she has to support her, and I think that also, so that means there's less dialogue in this book. And I am definitely a reader who really enjoys dialogue, so that was a component as well. However, I did love the twist in this book. It was great. I love the twist, but I also didn't like the multimedia components. This is sounding like I really didn't like this book. I did like this book. I think this is a beautiful way to wrap up the series. It's a very satisfying way to wrap up the series. It just didn't match up the expectations I had on going in, which is, I think, is more of a me thing than a book thing. So I did really like it. I still really love this series. I just didn't love it as much as I had hoped I was going to love it. All right, and then another book that finished out a trilogy that I did not love as much as I was hoping I was going to love is The Feastmakers by H.A. Clark. This is the final book in the Scapegracer series, I think is what it's called. And this is a YA contemporary witchy series, super gay, and I love it. I love it. It is an absolutely feral book. And if you don't know what that means, I'm so sorry. I can't help you. You just have to read the book. But these books are feral. The main character, Sideways, is absolutely feral, hot mess, disaster main character, and I love them. And their friendships with the other characters, like, ugh, it's teen Emily would have been all over the series, and I might have realized some things about myself sooner if I had had these books as a teenager. But this series is just so fun. It is such a romp. It does have some serious themes, so like maybe check content warnings and trigger warnings, because there's a lot. And I'm sad that this series is over, but also H.A. Clarke's adult debut fantasy is coming out later this year under August Clarke, and I'm so excited. I'm so excited. And then I also finished another duology, or another series. I read Dark Star Burning Ash Falls White by Emily Wen Zhao, and this series, it starts with Star of Silver Flame Like Night, and this series is so fun. It's got adventure, it's got romance, it's got demon gods. It's just a fast-paced, action-packed good time. This one more action-packed than the first one. The first one was a little bit more of a slower build, and in this one it's just like, it's so fast-paced. It's great. It's not a full, I'm gonna say there's a romance in it. It is not a romantasy. I will put it that way, because I don't want to spoil anything, but also like don't go into this duology expecting the conventions of a romantasy. All right, and now we are on to the books that I absolutely loved this month. The first one is not a full 5-star. I gave it like a 4.5, but I did really love it. So it's just kind of getting scooched into this category. And it was Vera Wong's Unsolicited, oh my gosh. Vera Wong's Unsolicited Advice for Murderers by Jessie Q. Satanto. And I read this because it was the Literally Dead book club pick for March. Yes. We'll say that's it. And I mostly listened to this on audio. I loved it on audio. Highly recommend. This is about an 80-year-old woman who owns a struggling tea shop, and she has a very like distant relationship with her son. She has very strict ideas of how people should live their lives, and she comes down one day into her tea shop and finds a dead body on the floor and determines that the police are not going to be able to figure out who solved the murder, so she may as well do it for them. And it was so fun. I love the found family aspect of this book. I thought initially we were only going to get Vera's point of view, but you actually get a whole bunch of different people's point of view, and I thought it was great. That's great. My complaint for this book is there is a child who is, I think she's supposed to be 2, and she read older. She was like 4 or 5. So I have had this complaint a couple times, and I just need authors to be able to accurately write the age group that the child is in your book. And if you can't do that, don't put a kid in your book. That's just what I'm gonna say. And I understand it's hard to write kids in books because you can't have them be too realistic, because that would just be annoying. But then when they're too precocious, like, it isn't believable. So I just like, let's either be realistic about what it's like to have children in your life and what they're capable of, speech-wise, cognitive-wise, ability-wise, or just don't put them in. Okay? Okay. But with the exception of that, I really loved this book. And then the final book, my favorite book, and also the last book in another series. I was doing a good job with that this month. I finally read Our Violent Ends by Chloe Gong, and one of you said that this one was even better than These Violent Delights, and you are 100% correct. I love this. This was so fast-paced. We started with so much action. The longing between Roma and Juliet almost did me in. I loved it so much. I forgot I was reading a Romeo and Juliet retelling until 3/4 of the way through the book, and then I got so nervous. But I think this whole series is, well, it's 2 books, but it's just fantastic. It's set in a alternative historic Shanghai. Chloe Gong does pull from real historic events, but then fictionalizes a lot of it to make it work for her world. And we have Roma and Juliet, who are the heirs to rival gangs in Shanghai, and of course they fall in love. And I think this series is really great because if you have read Romeo and Juliet, or if you've seen the play, there are so many Easter eggs throughout both books that reference the original text. But then if you've also never like experienced that story, I think it still stands on its own feet perfectly well. It's definitely like its own thing outside of the Shakespeare play. So absolutely love, like, Chloe Gong is quickly on her way to becoming a new favorite author. I can't wait to read more of her books. All right, friends, and there we have it. Those are all 14 books and the 5 books that I DNF'd in April. So thanks so much for watching this video. Let me know what your favorite books are that you read in April. Let me know what you think of my rating system. What is your rating system? Like, how do you rate books? Talk to me about your rating scale, because I'm really curious about how people decide what number of stars to give a book, or if you don't rate books. Talk to me about that, because I find that interesting. I'm really tempted to switch over to that, but I use Storygraph so extensively, I don't know if my completionist brain could actively stop rating books. That feels weird, but maybe next year. Maybe I'll work my way up to that this year. Anyways, so yeah, let me know all those things down in the comments below, or pick which one you want to respond to, either one. And then like if you liked it, subscribe if you want to, and I will see you all in the next one. Bye!